Can you hear us? If you can hear us on chat, just say yes on chat and no, so that we know we have audio problem.
We can hear you.
You can hear us. Perfect. Great. Okay. We're seeing people from Nairobi, from Mombasa, okay, Kampala. Great. Okay, Nairobi. From Nigeria, finally. Udochi, your brothers are here and sisters are here to support you and hear your wisdom. Let me just start off with you. So you went out and did some research around our topic for today, which is organization. The story behind the survey, even before we get into the survey itself.
Martin, could you ask that question again, please?
I was just asking the story behind how did you end up deciding to do the survey?
Okay, so hi everyone. For us, all our work revolves around data. And when COVID happened, for us, the first question was, what are people thinking? Because COVID pushed us, everybody, right, our backs right against the wall. So in many aspects of your life, whether it's your family, your finance, your health, people were having to start to think about how can I pursue a better version of myself so that I'm able to survive this. So obviously, one of the things that was obvious to us was that people's values were changing, or what was important to them was changing. And so we decided that we would identify the point at which the panic had sort of ended and people were now starting to get into a mode of thinking. And at that point that we would do a survey that would enable us to understand where employees stand. What are employees thinking? What are the things that are now important to them? How are they experiencing their organizations before COVID, during COVID, and then what would they like to see in the future based on this new experience? We also had the privilege of being able to compare all this to data that we'd collected in the past. So we took our 2016 to 2019 data, put it all together into one report, and so we're able to really have a very rich source of data for us to be able to think about what is the next level of culture in organizations after COVID.
Thank you very much, Anne. So Udochi, welcome to this session.
Thank you.
Maybe you could just share your background around culture and OD.
Yeah, so for culture, first of all, I'd like to define culture. So culture is the people's way of life, everything that happens in the organization, everything that is surrounded, that the organization's experience. So we have attitudes, behavior, and everything, basically, the environment the organization finds itself. So before COVID, for example, organizations would have cultures like active collaboration, complete candor, where employees are able to talk and express themselves. We also have Get It Done, where employees are able to get the work done regardless of the situation they find themselves. Now, COVID came and we are faced with a new normal. So whether we like it or not, a lot of things have changed. And culture has changed as well. So employees and organizations need to embrace this new normal and the new culture we found ourselves. One major thing that has changed is also that the fact that the work location has changed from the face-to-face interactions and the work on-site location to online and remote working.
Okay, thank you very much, Udochi. So before we get into the gist of things, we'd like to launch a poll, and we have two simple questions. One, has COVID made us become more human? Yes or no? And then number two is, has COVID made our workplaces better places to work? So let's take this poll just to have a feel of how things are, and then we can just dive deep into today's session. and would like to welcome the 78 HR professionals right from across the continent who have joined us this morning. Thank you very much. We'll open this poll for just 1 minute and then we can move on to today's session. Okay, we're closing the session, the polling now. Then I'll be sharing this poll, share the results. So, Anne, what do you think when you're seeing this small survey, this poll we've taken, and then as we can now move into your research that you guys did?
I would agree. I mean, it totally reflects what we are seeing. Has COVID made us more human? Yes, it has. As I said, it's pushed us to the wall. I mean, if you were the kind of person who was avoiding your spouse and never having to think about being a good husband or wife, then, you know, you've been pushed to the wall because you've had to be with them in the same space for, you know, a couple of months. When it comes to your health, you've had to think about that and think about how can you make sure that you survive COVID. So yes, it's made us more human. It's made us connect much more to our humanness and the things that are important to us. We're also seeing that from an organizational perspective, people just appreciating the opportunity to work from home or the opportunity not to have to commute. And they're seeing that as an organization becoming more human. So yes, it has become more human. Has it made it a better workplace? Yes, in some aspects, indeed, it has made it better. We say that the dysfunction of organizations has increased, but that is mainly because there are things that are the gaps around leadership styles, the gaps around communication. Those gaps are causing the dysfunction to increase. But in terms of are people experiencing the workplace better? Yes. And we've got a lot of evidence in that regard. So yes, your poll totally agrees with the results.
Thank you very much. And Udochi, to you, I've just realized, I've noticed, again, just a little bit away from organization culture, because then first we have our own human culture. I've noticed people are doing more activities than before. You find people taking walks in the morning for exercise, fathers with their daughters riding bikes, mothers with their daughters walking around and doing things. Has the availability of time made us connect with what really matters?
I would say yes. Yes, I agree totally. And especially in the workplace as well. Now, just like you said, in the family front, now, whether we like it or not, we are made to work in the house, work at home, and then we are also made to teach our children. So you find out that parents have more time for their children, and children, it creates an increased bond between the parents and children. So employees are also able to work while they do other things, while they have online meetings. For example, somebody can take a walk while having an online meeting. So it has made work a little bit more flexible than before.
Oh, thank you very much, Udochi. So Anne, let's get right into, you guys did the research in May. What did you find out?
Okay, actually, I would like to just add on to what Udochi has said there. I think the shift in terms of the humanness and what you're making reference to in terms of people taking walks with their children and so on is a lot more fundamental and more basic than that. It's what we're seeing is that, you know, our values are pretty consistent. They only change when something really significant happens, because our values are built over time and the experiences that we have, what we are taught in school, and so on. And in the past, before COVID, when we look at our results from 2016 to 2019, we see that when people articulated their values before, they were very much around character and personality. So it was very much around how other people see me, how others see me, how I show up in the world. And so they articulated when you went to employees and said, what are your values? You could actually categorize them into three main areas. People would talk about accountability, respect, honesty, integrity. And all these things are about corporate worthiness, you know, sort of like I am able to be an employee of this organization. Then another category would be around the values of self-discipline, efficiency, positive attitude. And so those values are about self-management. I can do the job. And then a third category would be around, people would give us the values of innovation, continuous learning, and commitment. So in between 2016 and 2019, all the surveys that we did, these were the top 10 values that were articulated. So people were really focused on character and personality and how they showed up at work. During COVID, however, this shift is so fundamental. The shift now is around, people are talking about values that are about competence and delivery. So what value do I bring to myself and others? And as I said, COVID has pushed us so far back against the wall that now we are forced to think about, in every area of my life, how can I show up as a better version of myself? So, you know, we are faced with the risk of losing a job. We are faced with the risk of not having enough money or getting sick. So we are really resourceful right now. So the values that people articulated around during COVID were around personal contribution, so accountability, creativity, commitment, achievement. Those are the things that people say. Then they talked about changing to grow. So they're talking about continuous learning, coaching and mentoring, adaptability and ambition. And then also around humanness, so work-life balance and caring. So what I'm saying is that, you know, this walking with the children, you know, being more family orientated, this whole thing about people selling vegetables out of a Mercedes Benz, all that stuff is about that shift from character and personality in terms of how people see me to competence and delivery. It doesn't matter how people see me. What matters most is what value I can bring. So that was, for me, the most fundamental thing that we found out in our survey. As far as the organization is concerned, and so from a personal values perspective, for us that shift is about people becoming much more productive, pragmatic, and being a lot more resourceful. So it's a really good place to be, in my view, and it's a change manager's dream. I mean, for me, it's just the perfect place to be able to start working with employees to create a new environment within their organizations. Shall I move on to current culture, or would you like me to stop there?
Actually, I wanted to ask something from the audience just before we go. If you're in the audience and you're currently working from home, kindly type a yes. If you're back to office, type an N. Let's just know how the mix is, so that we know where people are working from. So a yes, you're working from home. No is you're back in office. So a large number of people, I think, are still working from home, from what we're seeing. So Udochi, before we get back to Anne, are you seeing people more discovering themselves more, even at the with the work from home, or what's the situation like in Lagos?
Yes, I'd say I'll speak from my experience. So I've discovered a lot about myself simply because I've worked from home in the last 3 months. Now I discovered that I can learn something new. I've tried to learn a new skill in HR, and I was surprised at myself. I got a coach, and I've had meetings with my coach, and I'm like, where was all this before COVID-19? So it's not like I'm glad, I'm very happy with the COVID-19, but then I'm able to look inwards and see what else I can do for myself. Now, beyond that, I know also that from inquiries and research, employees are also looking for how best they can support the organizations to thrive. So employees want to be involved, they want to know what is happening and what steps the organizations are taking to thrive in COVID-19. So basically, COVID-19 and working from home has made us look inwards to see what else we can do. Basically, I would also say that it's making us look for where the cheese has moved to. So if we've read Who Moved My Cheese, we are now looking for where the cheese has moved to. How can I get to the cheese? What else can I do? And what skill can I get to where the cheese is?
Okay, thank you, Udochi. So, Anne, let's get back to the culture part.
So I really agree with Udochi. I mean, once again, she is talking about digging deep and becoming a lot more resourceful about yourself, and that being a really positive change in what people have become. In terms of the workplace culture or the workplace experience, so yes, there's been a lot of shift, and there's a lot of positive shift. And how we assess positivity is if people want the workplace to continue being like this when they articulate desired culture. And significantly, people are speaking about adaptability and agility, and the values are changing more to a workplace that is prepared to try new things, to embrace a new way of being. And employees are generally wanting to be a big part of this. We see the most significant shifts being around a shift from being agile, previously being bureaucratic. So employees are enjoying the agility and the adaptability, the trying new things. They're really enjoying that. But they're also really enjoying the fact that the organization is prepared to really try new things, because this being completely uncharted territory, people are prepared to try whatever it is that works. So they're enjoying that as well. Working from home seems to be quite a hit. Of course, there are a lot of people reporting stress, reporting the distractions that come with being with the family. But I think the appreciation of the freedom and the, you know, not having to have all these meetings, not having to spend so much time and thrive. So we are having to really look inwards at ourselves and with less focus on what the outside world is thinking. So that's the answer to that question. I see Martin is back. Martin? So,
sorry, I was saying, you can just proceed. We're back. We had a little problem with sorting out. You can just proceed with the session.
Okay. So, as far as desired culture is concerned, there's a lot of stuff that's happening now that employees would like to carry forward to the future. The focus on people, the adaptability. They would like to see an increase in accountability, which they feel they're not seeing currently. And that is partly because of the disconnection from the corporate community and poor communication during this period. So they really would like to see a lot of the things happening, being carried forward. And how they want to experience work is with greater inclusion. So being able to contribute to the organization, because now, as I said, they're very resourceful, so they feel like they have a lot of value that they can bring. And they want an enabling environment, and one that not only cares for them, but allows them to be accountable, that has connectivity, that where they're being coached and mentored, where they're being engaged, where there's continuous learning that is happening. The other thing to note is that when people, because the way we do this is we ask people to articulate the values that they would like to experience in the future, and we compare those to the current values they're experiencing. And the risk that we see when we look at this is that if we just go by what people are saying they want, is that we're running the risk of losing organizational purpose. So there's a lot of focus, there's focus on people, and there's a lot of focus on process. there hasn't been that much focus on purpose. So we need to sort of reconnect to our purpose. First, reconnect to our purpose. The other thing that we have a risk of is the corporate brand community, because as they say, you form a habit in 21 days. If we don't sort of proactively and intentionally work to build or rebuild the corporate brand community, then we'll suffer reputational risk internally and externally. We also have a risk of collaborative work practices. So people not being able to, just sort of figuring out how to work without necessarily having to work with others, because that's how human beings are. And we also run the risk of result orientation, we had a lot of people telling us things around the fact that we don't want to talk about our financial goals now that we're prioritizing health, and that's all well and good. But for the survival of the organization, result orientation is really critical. So that's what we are seeing in terms of the future. So the key themes are around the disablers, around resource allocation, the lack of inclusion, the poor communication structures, the management of people, both from a policy point of view and also just in terms of how you manage the employee journey, leadership in terms of crisis management. A lot of people saying that their leadership, the stress of leaders is affecting them, or the lack of visibility and sponsorship from leaders is affecting them. And the enablers are organizations that becoming much more adaptable and less bureaucratic. People and organizations being a lot more change ready, the balance in terms of work and home, and then the fact that they're being able to focus on fixing the processes. Those are some of the things. Before I mean we've got recommendations of how people can work to improve this, but maybe I should just stop there and give the chance to somebody else.
Okay. Sorry, apologies. We had lost sound briefly. So we'd like to Udochi, maybe you can share how you're handling change in your organization.
Hi, Martin.
Hi. Or rather, how can an organization handle change around culture, considering people are even working from home? Now, which culture do they have? They work from home, or their home culture, or they bring the organization culture 8 to 5 to their homes? Can you hear me? Anne, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Maybe I think Udochi's gone off briefly.
I'm here.
Oh yeah, okay. So I was asking, my question was, how do we manage this cultural shift? We are working from home, expected to have an organization culture. My home or house already has a culture. How do we manage this?
Now, you remember I said culture was the way we work, and of course the people are involved in culture. I also mentioned that, and Anne has also mentioned that employees want to be involved in what is going on in the organization at the moment. So I would say culture, they can manage culture by communication, one, and then looking inwards again. So what else can we do to enhance the already existing culture we have? And what else can we do to improve our culture with the face of COVID-19 and remote working? So I would also say that communication is key, engagement with employees, because they are the ones that will drive the culture. And then we can also have a situation where employees are involved by forming a culture committee, a committee which would involve the employees themselves and of course some management staff to drive culture. Now they can look inwards, conduct surveys, ask questions, pick the brains of the employees on what they think the culture of the organization should face, what they think should be the culture going forward, and even after post-COVID. So I would say looking inwards, picking the brains of the employees, asking questions, having pulse checks, doing surveys, conducting surveys, and finding out the best approach to face culture. So when employees are involved and they know that they are meant to drive culture, they'll rise up to the occasion and drive it.
Okay, Anne, we have a question here, which sounds interesting. Peter is asking, how do I manage the culture change of working 8 to 5 at office and the new norm of working from home and new employee work, and now employees working in the night?
Okay. I think I'll answer the question, but I'll just step back a little bit and say that I think that the first thing we need to recognize is that COVID is not our reality, is not our new normal. I mean, this period will pass, and we will get into a new phase. So this is not our destination. We haven't arrived yet. So we can't build for now. We have to build for the future. So that's the first thing. And I've been using a word lately as I speak to a lot more of my employees, of my clients, and hearing, and I keep saying, stop operating like we're in a COVID box. I mean, we just moved from our normal box and now we've jumped into a COVID box. We need to apply strategic thinking to this now in terms of thinking about the future. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that please appreciate that everybody is completely resourceful. I mean, if you ever thought you had hired the right guys, you can reap those dividends now. I mean, that these people are the best versions of themselves. So we are in a very resourceful state. So the first thing I would say is that in terms of how do you deal with any challenges you have, involve your employees. Ask them, what do they think we should do about this? That for me is the first thing. First of all, stop now, calm down and say, okay, we need to figure out our future, not just from our working from home, not just that from that perspective, in terms of, does our vision change because our customers have changed? Is our strategy changing? What's the situation with our brand? What's the situation with our people? What's the situation with our customer experience? So this is a holistic employee journey that you need to be thinking about. Then the next thing, of course, is to begin to ask yourself, how do you engage your people more? So we had listed a couple of things that you need to do. We talked about diversity and inclusion. So we've said that the importance of involving everybody in your organization, right from the bottom to the very top. Everybody needs to be involved in forging a new future. We also need to remember that one of the things that we have seen, and everybody wants to jump into working from home, but we are not equipped. I mean, people don't know how to manage their time. People don't know how to sort of take accountability if you're not being supervised. So there's a lot of development of individuals around self-management and self-regulation and self-leadership that needs to happen for us to be able to move on to the next place effectively. And that's not just for individual contributors, it's even for leaders of organization. We've seen a lot of things that tell us that there's a lot of development that needs to be done there. So leadership development at all levels is important, and the holistic development of people. And then the other thing is around communication, participation and engagement. People want to be engaged, they want to be empowered, and they want to be fulfilled. So we need to figure out how to engage our employees, help them understand what we are trying to achieve. This is where we are now seeking to go, and and make them part of the plan in terms of creating the solution. Then we talk about continuous learning, continuous improvement, coaching and mentoring, creating a learning environment for our employees so that we recognize that this is a place of continuous change. We haven't arrived at our destination. We are completely going to keep going and becoming more accountable for the journey that we are making. So those are the things that we need to do in order to be able to pause and reflect, think about everything from strategy to your customer experience and everything in between. I don't just think about one element in terms of working from home, think about the entire journey, and then think about how can we be able to involve employees in crafting solutions for a workplace that works, that enables them to thrive and to leverage this resourcefulness that they currently have.
Thank you, Anne. So, Udochi, let me just ask, is there anything new we are seeing, and are there anything we should expect in terms of shifting in culture?
Yes, like I said earlier, culture, the new cultures will change. There'll be a change and a shift. Now, the possibility of adapting to new cultures that we are going to experience is key. How fast can we adapt to these new cultures? What can we do? How agile are we? And how well can we understand the new cultures that we're going to be facing? So those are the new things. What skills do we need to develop? Or just like Anne has mentioned, what new thing do we need to do? So everything is changing, and I'm not overlooking the fact that some things will remain as is, some things will remain the same. However, let's also look at the big picture. What else do we need to do to face the culture that we'll be faced with? Hi, Martin.
Can I just answer a question here from Rebecca? Seems like there's emphasis on business strategy and customer experience. What about employee experience? What strategies can we employ to improve the employee value proposition? So Rebecca, there is no focus on, it's not true that there's a greater focus on business strategy, and forgive me if I made it sound like that. It's just that the way we look at culture is that there are many different buckets that determine culture. But for us, culture is about shared values, and it's very important that the employee experience is derived from those 4 buckets. And those 4 buckets are, first, business strategy, because when a business starts in terms of vision, the first question is, and how shall we execute it? What kind of behavior do we need? And so building culture must come from that. You must, because that's, that's why people start businesses, because they have some goals that they want to meet. So it's important to think about, from a business strategy perspective, what kind of behavior do we need to be able to make sure we deliver this strategy? And then the second bucket would be around the brand. What kind of behavior will bring our brand to life, or so that when people experience us, they know who we are? So that, Udochi works for MTN. If people meet Udochi, they need to be able to see the brand coming to life. She needs to embody those values and behave in a way that shows that that's where she comes from. Then you have people, and when we talk about people, we're just talking about the kind of values. What kind of values do people bring into work based on the people that you recruit and how you develop your people? What kind of values do they bring into work? And finally, the customer experience. How do you want to show up to your customers? So these 4 things, if we have shared values across these 4 things, then we will have a good culture. But if you have a culture where your people have different values from the values you need to be able to execute your strategy, then you will fail. So, that's why it's important to think about everything from business strategy to customer experience. And when I say everything in between, I'm talking about the brand, I'm talking about the management of people, I'm talking about the environment and how the things that hold us together, how we define success. All these things are part of it. And so it's not that the employee experience does not exist on its own. It exists within a context. And the way we develop culture is by creating the right context. And so, so if we are building an employee value proposition, it needs to take all these things into account. And just in terms of going back to Udochi's definition of culture at the very beginning of this conversation and talking about it is the way we do things. But I think the best analogy I've ever heard around what culture is a comparison between being in a very stuffy room and what that does to you in terms of your energy, or being in a forest taking a walk and what that does to your energy. And it was a comparison done by a man called Professor Ghoshal many, many years ago. And I think it is one of the best comparisons ever. If you have bad culture that is not aligned, so when it's not aligned, what it means is that it doesn't serve to deliver your strategy, it's not aligned to the values of your people, and it's not aligned to the values of your customers or what your customers are seeking, it doesn't speak to your brand, that is a culture that is not aligned. And when you have that, it's like a stuffy room. It reduces the energy of people because there's no trust. Because what you say you're going to do, which is your strategy, and how, the way in which you do it are two different things. How can people trust you? So when you lose that trust, then you have that stuffy room. But when you have a place where what you said you would do is what you are doing, and is what people are seeing you doing and how you're doing it, then trust develops. And when trust develops, you have a forest where the energy is much more, it's much more liberating and much freer, and you don't have to keep looking behind your back and so on. So that's how I feel that would be the best explanation. So everything, you can't look at culture as an isolated, ambiguous thing. You have to look at it in the context of what the organization wants to achieve, what customers want, because our customers have changed with COVID. When we talk about those personal values shifted, our customers' personal values have also shifted. So what our customers want, and we must start to rethink what it means for our people.
Okay, and I would like to respond to one question from James. So James is saying, are there tools we can use to gauge performance in these remote working conditions? So first of all, I would like to say for a lot of organizations and companies, we had already prepared our KPIs and our performance for the year. Yes, our KPIs for the year and goals for the year. And now COVID-19 came, everything changed. A lot of things have changed. And we need to look inward. So now I'll propose the start, stop, and continue model, where you need to look at what do you need to start doing, what do you need to stop, and what do you need to continue. So for the goals that have already been set at the beginning of the year, what are those things that we know, everybody knows, are not possible to achieve this year? So there are some goals that we had already set, and it's clear to everyone that these goals are no longer achievable in the face of COVID-19. Now, what else do we need to start? In the face of COVID-19, of course, there are a lot of things that have changed, and there are things that we've started doing. One is working from home. One is increased engagement, more communications with employees. So we can now set our goals around these new activities that we found ourselves doing. I also like to propose that for performance, we don't need to wait till it's the mid-year or quarterly or at the end of the year. Performance appraisal needs to be real-time and continuous. So as employees work, as we engage with employees, we give feedback on the goal. And I also propose that these feedbacks should be documented. So at the end of the year, we're looking at what has been documented, what employees, the engagements and discussions we've had over time in the course of the year, and rate our performance based on that. And then we can't overlook the fact that there needs to be continuous engagement. Now we're working from home, face-to-face interaction has been eroded. And how do we know that employees are doing what they said they would do? Or how do we believe that managers are following up with what we're meant to do? So continuous engagement in various mediums and various formats. It doesn't have to be over the phone. It can be an email, it can be a team meeting, however suits each unit or each division. There has to be continuous engagement. Then I would also like to propose that for this period, we need to work in smaller units. So each unit, it's easier to interact when we are smaller. So we have teams of 4, 5, 6, and then there's also the larger teams as well, that whatever we do in our smaller units can feed into goes into the larger units, and then to the end of the day down to the organization at large. So I propose that we work in smaller teams and then gauge our performance based on what we've done in the smaller units. And finally, I would say for employees that you think they need hand-holding, you can propose that they have coaches. You can assign a coach to employees. It depends on how you do it in your organization. When I have a coach and I know I'm accountable to my coach, and it can also be in a situation where the coach is able to give feedback to both the employee and the manager of the employee. So the coach gives feedback, and where there are needs for changes and new ways of working, it can be effected immediately. So basically, real-time performance appraisal, continuous feedback, constant engagement, and communication would solve the problem.
Thank you very much, Udochi. For a more detailed information on performance management and managing remote workers, I'd like to refer everyone to our YouTube channel on a session we did in May, purely on managing remote employees. So, and back to our main discussion. On this, there's something about how to recover and thrive. And also, we'd like to look at it from the perspective of, is any generation doing better in this state we're in?
So the way we collect our data is we identify areas that are what we call jumps. And jumps are really what people are requesting for the most. So what we had in that particular banner around what people are requesting most and the things that people need to think about is around continuous improvements on, we don't just need to ditch everything. We can look at some of the stuff that we had and were doing before and see how to do it better. Issues around accountability. And as I said, the lack of good communication structures for most of these organizations has led to people feeling that the organization is not being accountable, especially because they're being asked to take half pay and nobody's telling them where their money, how revenues have changed. So accountability is an important part. We need to remember that these people are now not just employees who come and go, they are now stakeholders. They're now interested and they want to be a part of it. So accountability is going to become very, very important. Coaching and mentoring, the realization that there are very many different gaps at an individual level, at an organizational level, at a leadership level. So people feeling the need for coaching and mentoring, and also feeling that they can coach and mentor others. Agility, so embedding change. So adaptability is really about responsiveness, but agility is around being able to embed that ability to shift quickly. And then the other one is around brand image and reputation. We're seeing that a lot of brands need to now rethink how they position themselves, because I'm sure that, I don't know about you, but I've found myself using brands that I wouldn't regularly use, but I found myself using them now. And the question for me is, how will that brand keep me connected even when my circumstances have changed post-COVID? And so brands need to think about that and how they are being perceived by others. Brands that have been have not done so well in being perceived as being digital and being able to engage their customers online will suffer, and they need to fix their brand image. Employee engagement, as we said, people want to be involved. They want to participate, and not just in a token way where you call a town hall and tell people what to do and then call that engagement. I mean, this is real participation. I want to know what you're doing with this, why you're doing that, and so on. So we really need to shift our thinking around that. And the last one is around diversity and inclusion. And this is a big one for me. I mean, I have a plan, for example, where all the senior leadership team were above 55. They can't come to work. So, I mean, now what do? They're sitting there because their organization is not diverse enough. It's an aged organization, and that has presented them with quite serious problems. So So those including increasing the diversity, and not just by the way, the demographic diversity when you talk about age and whatever, but also the experiential diversity, the different people who worked in different sectors, and the cognitive diversity, people who think differently. Those are the organizations that are able to win. And of course, building in real inclusion so that everybody's voice is heard. What tools can you use to make sure that you're hearing the voices of every single employee, and that nobody's voice is being muffled by their manager or by the fact that they don't have access to a system that allows their voice to be heard. So those are the things that we had listed as things that people need to recover and thrive. But I just want to say two other things. The first one is, please don't get into the trap as HR people of starting to build very sort of tactical policies and systems within your current context. Make sure that you go back to your leader and ask, where are we going now? How has our direction shifted? So that you build for the future. Otherwise, you will find yourself with something that doesn't work next year or the year after that. So please, I'm just asking everybody to really step up and to sort of level up and think about the way you manage people, not just from a HR systems perspective, but very much from a strategy perspective, a business strategy. Where is this business going? Where is the future of our business? And then be able to build around that.
Thank you, Anne. So we have about 6 minutes before we end our session. Since some nice questions here. So Udochi, I'd like to bring this for you, that how do you handle a question by Jacinta? How do you handle cuts in a place where 90% of the employees are not cooperative or able to change, and who are technical employees, work in the field? There's also something about performance, but then let's just look at the change aspect. How do you handle that?
Is that a question to me, Martin?
Udochi is left, but you can take it up. I think Udochi, we've lost that briefly. You can take that up.
Okay, so Jacinta, the thing about change is that all we need is a compelling case. And one of the reasons why I really love to work with data is because with data, you take the guesswork out of the game. You know exactly what you need to do to build a compelling case. So when you talk about people not being cooperative or not being able to change, that is not, I've not experienced that, and I've done culture work in many strange, different types of organizations. So what is your compelling case? What is the reason why they need to do the things that we need to do? And you can't achieve it by talking at people. It has to be a dialogue-based approach. So how do you handle change in a place where you feel that the employees are not cooperating or they're not able to change? Start by thinking about what is the compelling case that you have for them to be able to shift. And then think about how are you going to be able to find the right people to help them make that move, and what skills do they need. So if you're familiar with the ADKA model, then how do you move people along that model? So from awareness to wanting to change, knowing that they need to change, wanting to change, which is desire, giving them the knowledge to be able to change, giving them, making sure that they are able to do the things that they need to do until you get to reinforcement. So that's what I would say. How do you make employees? I think that's really the answer to that.
Udochi, can you hear me?
In addition, I wanted to add something to what Anne has said to this question. So I would say one other thing that needs to be increased and overhyped in this period is trust. So we need to build trust. We need to ensure that we have trust, and it's two ways. So how well does the employee trust the employer, and how much does the employer trust the employee? Now, I read this morning that building trust can help make the bond between the employer and employee to be increased. So I'd say we should also try to focus on trust. Let's be vulnerable enough to know that these employees would do what we've asked them to do. And the employees as well should be vulnerable enough to believe that the organization would do what it has promised to do.
Okay, thank you. So as we wind up this session, just one question which I think Anne can give your view and Udochi can give your views. What actions are needed to improve a company's current culture? And again, for the times you're in and maybe for the times that we might be headed to.
So from my perspective, the first thing, and I can't say it enough, is that for people to be able to stop, to pause and ask the question, where do we want to go? What kind of future do we want to build? That's always the first point of culture. What kind of future do we want to build? And for our whole ecosystem, for our customers, for our employees, for our shareholders, for our communities, what kind of organization do we want to build? And then be able to say to yourself, so what is important to these people? And how can we be able to bring them together as our core set of values? And then how do we make decisions that reflect these values? So for me, there's pause, stop, and ask yourself, where do we want to go next? Because building initiatives, starting to just build initiatives is not going to be useful. We need to be able to define the future first, and as an organization, from an organizational point of view, and then be able to build around that in all the other different aspects of culture, around which management of people is just one aspect. So we need to start from there.
Udochi, same question.
Okay, for me, I would say, like Anne has already, and from the survey report, and Anne has mentioned earlier, employees need to be involved. So I would say unity. So there should be a unity of purpose. Let's know that we are all in this together. Now, the organizations need to create a platform where the employees are involved and allowed to say, and allowed to express themselves. I mentioned earlier that we can also have surveys, pick the brains of the employees, let them say what they want to see in the future. So when they are aware that they are in this together and the organization has involved them, there will be a unity of purpose, and we'll all try our best to make the company survive this era we found ourselves in. So basically, it would be, for me, to be unity, ensuring that everybody understands that we are all in this together. And I've also realized that some employees have complained that they don't know what's going on in the organization. So policies are being changed, everything is happening fast, and the leaders are not letting them into what is happening. So I would like to say that the more we engage, the more we communicate, and the more we let employees know into our world and know what is going on inside, it will help build the culture we would like to have.
Thank you, Udochi. So as we are winding up, we've seen quite a number of questions which we have not had time to respond, but we will respond to them on a subsequent email regarding this.
I'm not able to see some of the questions.
There's some questions which are of the era of telecommunicating that has been brought on by COVID. What skills do you believe that HR professionals should have? That's a whole hour discussion. So we will share responses to most of these questions on email.
I'll quickly answer this question.
1 minute.
Okay. Okay, so like I said earlier, it's simple. Let's look for where the cheese has moved to. What skills are prevalent in this situation, and those are the skills we need to build on. For example, technology, digital, analytics, data analytics. Let's build our skills around the situation we find ourselves. Simple. Find where the cheese has moved to and build your skills around there.
So thinking skill is the number one, then you can think everything else. So thank you very much to over the 100 participants who joined us in this session. As we conclude this, if you have any question, you can email to me, Martin at iPerformance Africa, We're typing that on chat. Lastly, we'd like you to rate this session on a scale of 1 to 5. Can you give us a rating for this session and we'll be able to know your feedback on chat? And you give the rate this session on a 1 to 5. We'd like to thank everyone who joined us today. I saw participants from South Africa. Thank you very much. I think Zambia and Zimbabwe. Thank you very much. Next week, we handle strategy. So we'll have Charles Udochi. And also, if you're not receiving emails from us with recordings of the previous session, we'd like to request you to check your junk mail and mark it as not spam, and then we'll be able to have delivered the sessions to your inbox. So thank you very much, Anne. Thank you very much, Udochi. We are happy. We're glad you could join us. Any last word before we close? Anne and Udochi?
I just sort of wish everybody well. I hope that you remind yourselves that not to make sure that you don't stay in a COVID box, and that you emerge from it stronger and much better equipped.
Yes, for me, I would say, let's remember, this too shall pass. So we're looking forward to a better organization, a stronger us and a better us.
So thank you very much. So Anne, sorry, there was a question I was seeing common. Where can people get a copy of this research report?
I think I sent you a link, did I?
Yeah, oh yes. Okay, so in today's email, we're going to share a link to download that report. So be on the lookout for the email this afternoon. Thank you very much, everyone. We're glad that you could join us. Join us next week as we handle strategy, and we're glad that you could make time, and we want to wish everyone a great day and a happy weekend. For the Kenyans, if you're still a Kenyan like me and you have not filed your returns, this is the time between now and next week. Thank you very much and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you, Martin.
Thank you, bye.